Dave, you can continue.
Okay, Detective Bertrand, after that very riveting publishing of all the photos, let's move on. Before you on the desk right there, you have what's been previously marked as states HH for identification purposes only. If you could go ahead and open that up and look at it. Scissors.
Please.
HH. What is that? You
Well,
leave it in there for now.
There's it's a box labeled evidence, and it says beer bottle pieces, and it's got the address to the west substation.
Okay.
And then inside there's another.
Okay, so let's move on to this one.
So let's
Keep it
see
in
what
there. Detective Bertrand, is that the same beer bottle we saw in the pictures?
just
Sure.
It's not in the same condition because it's been tossed around, but yes,
Okay. Is that the same label in there?
yes.
And has there been any opening of the package prior to you opening it here today?
No.
Here, at this time, the state would request to move states HH in as states 35.
No objection.
And I'll bring it over here to publish the label to the jury, but I'm going to leave it in the box so that there's other
You're going to
stuff.
take out the label part?
We'll just do it right here. Mr. Clerk, it's So this is the Yingling Black and Tan label. And Detective Bertrand, was this item ever submitted for testing to your knowledge?
I don't recall.
Okay. And Detective Bertrand, did you ever attempt to put that beer bottle back together?
No.
Okay, so that was recovered May 3rd of 2014. So I'm going to go on to May 4th of 2014. Did you attend the funeral of Fakhruddin Mohammed Knight?
I did.
When you were at the funeral, is that common practice for homicide investigations?
It is.
Okay, while you were there, who did you meet?
Objection, hearsay, confrontation clause.
Individuals already testified.
Sidebar.
Thank you.
On May 4th, at the funeral, did you meet Ivan Saeed Ali?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Moving on to May 7th, 2014. Did you have an occasion to come into contact with someone who became known to you as Demetrius Elder?
I know the objective appears the witness is refreshing his recollection, which is known for the jury.
Yep.
Specifically, do you remember the exact date you made contact with Demetrius Elder?
I can look at my report.
Please refresh your memory. We have on page 18 and 21.
Yes,
Okay, so May 7th, 2014, did you respond to the hospital?
I did.
And who did you make contact with there?
With Demetrius Elder. Myself and Detective Taylor.
I'm now showing you what's been previously marked as states JJ for identification purposes only. Do you recognize that picture?
And that's Demetrius Elder.
And were you present when that picture was taken?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that fairly accurately represent what Mr. Elder looked like back on May 7th of 2014?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would submit states JJ into evidence as states 36th and final exhibit.
No objection.
And request permission to publish.
Okay.
That we're looking at here now for the jury is Mr. Elder.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you describe his race?
He's a black male.
And about how tall was Mr. Elder compared to yourself?
He's about 5'6", something like that.
Okay. So moving on to May 9th of 2014, did you have an occasion to make contact with an individual who became known to you as Armando Baptista?
Yes,
Where did you make contact with Mr. Baptista?
at his home.
And do you see Mr. Baptista here in court today?
I do.
Can you please point him out and identify him by an article of clothing?
He has a black or dark gray suit and like a similar color tie.
Okay, and your Honor, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant?
No reflecting.
And Detective Bertrand, who else was with you that day?
Detective Toyota, Detective Zeller, and Detective Caceres from the Broward Sheriff's Office.
Were you present for the documentation of any injuries on Mr. Baptista's body?
I was.
Okay. With regards to in the home, what did you see in the house that was of note to you?
We first met outside with his attorney, and we went inside the house. And once inside the house, one of the things that I remember seeing, which I discreetly took a picture of, was there was an entertainment TV, and on the top shelf there was a Boston Red Sox baseball cap. Different from the one, but it was the same team.
So similar to the same team, but not the same hat as was seen on scene.
Yes.
So that we're clear, that is that hat here that's reflected. This was the hat from on scene, correct?
That's the hat from scene, yes.
Okay. And this is the Boston Red Sox hat in States 4. After you made contact with Mr. Baptista, did you do any other investigative steps in this case?
We met later that afternoon or evening with Wendy again.
Okay. Moving on to June 25th of 2014. Were you present when Mr. Baptista gave a statement to the state attorney's office?
No.
When did you learn about that statement?
Objection or relevance?
Can I go side by your
They continue.
No. So Detective Bertrand, did you learn about that statement that was taken sometime this year?
Yes.
And with regards to the Coral Gate complex down in Dade County that you responded to, did you retrieve the surveillance footage from that location?
We did.
Did you review it?
I made an attempt. It was a massive file, and the cameras were all messed up. I think they were like 4 to 5 days different, like whatever the time was showing, it was like 5 days backwards.
So is there anything of evidentiary value that you could glean
No,
from it?
no.
Can I have a moment here?
Sure.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Defense, you may inquire.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Kimbach. I'm just going to ask you
Good
some questions. So the state attorney's office, the prosecutors, took a statement from Armando Baptista back in 2014, and they never told you about it until this year?
I learned about it, I want to say maybe 3-4 months ago.
Okay, so summer of 2018.
Sometime this year. I don't remember exactly the date, but it was probably like 3-4 months ago.
All right, so you're the lead detective on the case, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were overseeing the investigation of the death of Fakardine Knight, correct?
That's correct. But once I turn it over to the state attorney, then it's basically now it's their case.
Okay. Back in 2014, did the state never ask you to follow up on anything as a result of Mr. Baptista's statement to them? Is that correct?
No.
Have you ever actually listened to the statement?
I did, again, like whenever I found out about it, I was able to get a copy and listen to it, yes.
And when was that?
Again, whenever it was, 3, 4, 5 months ago. It was sometime this year. I don't remember exactly when, but.
Okay. I want to talk about the Red Solo Cup. You did not see a red Solo cup the night of the incident, correct?
That's correct, sir.
You were there, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were there at the stop sign, you saw the beer bottle, correct?
Yes.
You don't find the red Solo cup that we have here in evidence until the next day, correct?
That's correct, sir.
When you and Detective Zeller go back to the area to canvass the scene again, correct?
That's correct.
What time of day was it when you got there?
Can I look at my report?
Sure.
Just to see if I wrote it down. It was daytime, I can tell you that. It was 1800 hours, so that's the time that we went back, so that's 6 p.m.
Okay. Did you arrive at 6 p.m. or is that when you found the cup?
No, that's when we got there.
Okay. Did you find the cup right when you got there, or had you already gone all the way down to University and back?
I don't recall the sequence, if it was right away or after, but again, it was still daylight when we found it.
You testified on direct. I'm going to grab your little handy demonstrative aid. You testified on direct that you found this Solo cup here in front of this house, essentially at the corner of Terra Road and Miramar Parkway. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
On July the 24th of 2018, this year, am I correct that you came in to testify in a proceeding in State versus Demetrius Elder?
Yes, sir.
You sat right in that chair while you were testifying, correct?
Yes, sir.
And am I correct that you were, just like you were done here, you were asked about the red Solo cup, correct?
That's correct.
And am I correct that when the lawyer asked you, how do you recognize it?
Objection, Your Honor, improper impeachment.
Judge, under Pierce, this is completely proper.
What?
Under the Pierce case, this is exactly how I'm supposed to do it.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
When the lawyer on July 24th, 2018 asked you, how do you recognize it, showing you the cup, you responded, we found it at the scene just west of Terra Road, like 2 or 3 houses west in the front yard. On July 24th, you said it was 2 or 3 houses west.
That's correct.
Today, you're saying it was that house on the corner of Terra Road and Miramar Park.
That's how I remembered it at the time. I think I went through some of the reports to refresh my memory, and
Okay, so in July 24th, you remembered it as being...
Judge Tate would renew my objections to improper impeachment.
On July 24th, you remember it being 2 or 3 houses to the west, but now you're saying you remember it being at this house here.
that's correct.
This red Solo cup that you found, was it, to your knowledge, was it ever dusted for fingerprints?
I'm not sure, sir.
You are, again, the lead detective on this case.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it, if you wanted that cup to be dusted for fingerprints, could you have directed that to be done?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, was the red Solo cup ever swabbed for DNA?
I don't know.
if you had directed for that to be done, would it have been done?
Yes, sir.
Prior to when that cup was brought here to court on July 24th, where was it?
I'm sorry?
The cup. Where was it?
I believe at the police department.
So it's been sitting there at the Miramar Police Department for the last 4 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay, going back to that night, April 25th, 2014.
Can I explain what you're asking?
You can, once if the state wants you to answer some questions afterwards, they're free to do so. When you are there that night, April 25th, am I correct that that police officers were walking up and down Terra Road, correct?
There were officers there, yes, sir.
And other than what we've talked about, the bottle, the hat, the $20 bill, and then the bloody items that were in the yard, did you see anything else of evidentiary value that night there on Terra Road?
No.
I want to talk about the beer bottle. You obviously observed the spout and head of the beer bottle there at the intersection of Terra Road and Miramar Parkway, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this, the broken spout was right at the area where you believed that this incident had occurred, correct?
Correct.
And you are aware that Melanie Peluso swabbed the spout of that bottle for DNA.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And did Melanie Peluso, as the lead detective, did Melanie Peluso ever tell you that she had found a ridge detail fingerprint on the spout?
I don't recall.
Did you ever know that there was a fingerprint on the spout of the beer
Objection, Your
bottle?
Honor, mischaracterization of prior testimony.
I'll rephrase. Because I can rephrase.
Go ahead.
Did you ever know that Melanie Peluso found something she thought to be a fingerprint on the spout?
As I'm sitting here now, I don't recall. Perhaps we discussed it. Just because there's a print, it doesn't mean that it's of value to be identified. So if it was something that perhaps that it was of value, we would have sent it. But if it was just some ridges, fingerprints, as you know, have certain points and details that have to have for it to be able to identify. So you would probably discussed it. As I don't recall, I can't tell you right now exactly when or.
Okay, so you're assuming that you discussed it, but you don't remember that discussion as you sit here today.
Yes, sir.
I'm correct that there are essentially two separate scenes where pieces of this beer bottle are found, correct? There's the scene on scene of Miramar Parkway and Terra Road, and then there's the bottom of the bottle found in the Impala itself, correct?
In the car, yes, sir.
Okay. So I want to the bottom of the bottle that we just saw introduced into evidence. You're not the one taking the pictures and collecting the evidence inside the car, correct?
No.
That was a crime scene technician named Ashley Clay. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
But you were present when Ashley Clay processed this vehicle, and you observed the bottom of the bottle there on the passenger seat, correct?
Yes, sir.
Am I correct that when she took that bottom out, that you observed a drop of blood there on the body of the bottle itself?
No, I don't recall that.
You
Just
don't-
they're collecting, but I'm not standing over them, unless I'm told that they found something or I don't recall that. No.
Okay. While you were there, did you direct Miss Clay to swab the bottle, the bottom of the bottle?
Again, I have to have faith in what they're doing, and they have a job to do, and I don't sit there telling them what to do. They know what to do, and I don't think I was there telling them, do this, do that. There's certain things that I may look that specifically that I want something done. I'll tell them, hey, just make sure you do this or whatever. But outside of that, they're the ones that are collecting. It's their responsibility.
Fair enough. Did you observe Miss Clay swab the bottom of the bottle?
I observed her collect many swabs and swab many things. I can't say that I saw her specifically the beer bottle, no.
As the lead detective in this case, did you think that there was evidentiary value to the bottom of that beer bottle?
Yes, and I took steps, reference the markings on the bottom of the beer bottle.
You took steps to collect it, right?
To collect and photograph because of markings that the victim had on his face that were consistent with the
Judge,
bottom of the...
objection. Right, come sidebar, please. The bottle itself, did you ever ask that it be, no, did you ever ask that any swabs from the bottle be shipped to the Broward Sheriff's Office for analysis?
Yes,
You did?
yes.
Okay.
Hence the DNA that we got back on the bottom.
I'm talking about the bottom of the bottle. Did you ask if swabs would be sent to the Broward Sheriff's Office?
It is possible. I can't tell you every single word that I had with Ashley 4 years ago. If there was something that she collected that we thought was of importance, it would have been sent to the lab. But again, the lab does not analyze every single item that we collect. And they just don't do it. We have to be limited on what we send to them, and once an identification is made, they don't want to process additional items because there's already been an identification made of the suspect. So hence why probably more items weren't sent to the lab.
Is it your testimony that you asked the Broward Sheriff's Office to test those swabs for DNA?
No, that's not what I
Can
said.
we clarify as to what swabs?
Hold on. He was in the middle of answering the question. Please complete the answer.
That's not what I said.
So you did not ask that the Broward Sheriff's Office test the swabs from the bottom of the bottle for DNA?
Again, to repeat my answer,
I mean, it's
I could only tell you what working with the Broward Sheriff's Crime Lab. Once you get an identification of a suspect, okay, from whatever evidence we've submitted to them, okay, that they don't take more evidence to basically do the same thing. They just don't. So if you're asking me, did I ask them afterwards? Probably not, no.
Okay, thank you. Did you ever instruct Ms. Clay or anyone else to dust the bottom of the bottle for fingerprints?
Again, you're asking me the same questions, different. I'm not there supervising. I'm not a crime technician or a crime scene technician. That's their responsibility, and I got to trust that they're collecting whatever. There may be items that specifically that I may want, that I'll discuss it with them, but that's their responsibility. I'm not sitting behind them saying what to do, when to do it, what to collect, what to swab. That's their job.
So is the answer to that question no? You did not instruct anyone to dust the bottom of that bottle for fingerprints?
I don't recall.
Did you ever observe anyone dust the bottom of that bottle for fingerprints?
No, sir.
As you sit there now, do you know whether Mr. Knight's, the decedent's, fingerprints are on that bottle?
No.
As you sit there now, do you know whether Mr. Knight's DNA is on the bottom of that bottle?
Well, no.
As you sit there now, do you know whether Mr. Baptista's DNA is on the bottom of that bottle?
No.
I want to go back to the area. I'm going to talk about the area for a second. You're familiar with this area, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It's a neighborhood called the Knolls, I think it's called, is that right?
Yes, sir.
If I'm in a car, this is kind of cut off on this side. So my question is going to be as to what's over here. If I'm in a car here facing this way, am I correct that I can get out to Miramar Parkway by driving straight and then turning left on a street that's over here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would not need to turn around to come back. I could turn around to come back to get to Miramar Parkway, but I could also go straight. Is that correct?
If you're familiar with the area.
Okay. Thank you. When you were at the McMath house that night, April 25th, 2014, Corey McMath was there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was anyone named Walter Stanley there?
I don't know if he was there when we got there or when the officers got there. I know he was not one of the persons that I interviewed.
Did anyone named Walter Stanley come up to you and talk to you?
No.
You didn't talk to anyone named Walter Stanley?
No.
No one was pointed out to you as being Walter Stanley?
No.
You later learned about an individual named Walter Stanley, correct?
Yes, sir.
And am I correct that Detective Toyota goes as part of the investigation and speaks with Walter Stanley?
Yes.
And that interview was recorded, correct?
Yes, sir.
In the days after this happened, am I correct that you are in continuous contact with people from Mr. Knight's family? Is that correct?
Mostly his sister.
His sister, I think Tahira Knight is her
Tahira
name,
Knight,
correct?
yes.
And did she have a boyfriend named Michael Lewis, something along those lines?
Yes.
Okay. Am I correct that as part of that investigation, you gave Tahira Knight and Mr. Lewis a recording device so that they could record a conversation with Corey McMath?
I gave them one recorder.
Okay,
Yes.
you gave them one recorder.
Right, not each,
Right.
just one.
And am I correct that they were able to record a conversation with Corey McMath?
Yes.
Okay, and that recording was given to you, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You indicated on direct that you obtained a 911 call, is that right?
Yes, sir.
In the that 911 call didn't, nobody saw what happened, is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that 911 call didn't tell you one way or another about who did it or what had occurred?
No.
When you go to take the pictures of Mr. Baptista, that's on May 9th of 2014, is that right?
Can I look at my report?
Yes, of
real quick?
course.
Yes, sir.
That is exactly 2 weeks following the April 25th incident, correct?
Exactly 2 weeks, yes, sir.
I want to talk about when you find the Impala at the apartment complex in Miami Lakes from do we have that picture that they just introduced of the apartment complex? Nope, that's not it. The apartment complex.
It's 32. It's 32.
There it is. Thank you. The state showed you in direct the state's
Can I come down?
32. Yes, of course. This apartment complex. Ashley Farrell lives there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Ashley, correct?
Yes, sir.
Armando Baptista does not live here, correct?
No, not
He doesn't live in the county, correct?
Hollywood.
He lives in Hollywood. Okay. So the vehicle when you find it is, I'm taking it down. That was it. The vehicle when you find it, it's, am I correct that there is like leaves and stuff on it that made it look like it had been there for a little while?
Yes, sir.
It was in a guest parking spot, correct?
I believe so. I'm not really sure what the markings were.
Okay.
And I don't recall. It's possible, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
That's okay. It was in an actual parking spot. You
Yeah.
agree with that,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
Wasn't
sir.
pulled off on the side somewhere, correct?
No, it was actually in between the lines and a parking space.
And there was no tarp or anything like that hiding the vehicle, correct?
No, sir.
And I think you testified you could actually see blood on the outside of the vehicle right when you walked up to it, correct?
Me. I don't know if someone else would have thought it was blood or something like that. To me, based again on 24 years as a detective, 26 in law enforcement, to me, I knew it was blood. It looked like caked blood. It's a different color. It's not going to be bright red, where somebody would look at it and say, "Oh, that car's full of blood," you know.
But you, as a trained detective, you could see.
To me, it appeared to be blood. Yes.
Right there. You were also able to see the broken pieces of the beer bottle right there on the passenger seat, right through the window, correct?
Yes, sir.
These windows were not dark tints where you couldn't see through, correct?
No.
That vehicle, am I correct that that was a Chevy Impala? It was registered to Ashley Farrow.
Yes, sir.
Right? And again, Ashley Farrow is the girlfriend of Demetrius Elder.
Yes, sir.
The license plate was assigned to a 2014 Kia Optima, correct?
I believe so. I know it wasn't assigned to the vehicle. I think she had just bought a new car, and I think it was Detective Toyota that found the vehicle registered to her, and so he's the one that, you know, basically he called me, said, "Hey, I think I found the car. Go over to this address in Miami Gardens, see if the car is for the day." And that's when I left there, drove to that location, and started driving around looking for the car.
Did you see when Ashley had purchased that new vehicle?
No, I don't recall.
It wasn't within the last week, correct?
I don't think so. I mean, I probably looked at it at some time back then. I don't have a recollection of that. Again, it was Detective Toyota that did the research on that. He was sitting at the office doing research while we were doing surveillance, and that's how we came up with it.
When you were there, it was May the 2nd of 2014?
At the
Coral Gate, when you first find the vehicle at the Coral Gate apartment complex.
Yes, May 2nd. Yes, sir.
And you indicated that you got some surveillance video of the apartment complex, I guess the parking lot?
Yes, sir.
All right. And did it show the entire, how far back did that surveillance video go? When you were at the McMath house that night, April 25th, 2014, Corey McMath was there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was anyone named Walter Stanley there?
I don't know if he was there when we got there or when the officers got there. I know he was not one of the persons that I interviewed.
Did anyone named Walter Stanley come up to you and talk to you?
No.
You didn't talk to anyone named Walter Stanley?
No.
No one was pointed out to you as being Walter Stanley?
No.
You later learned about an individual named Walter Stanley, correct?
Yes, sir.
And am I correct that Detective Toyota goes as part of the investigation and speaks with Walter Stanley?
Yes.
And that interview was recorded, correct?
Yes, sir.
In the days after this happened, am I correct that you are in continuous contact with people from Mr. Knight's family? Is that correct?
Mostly his sister.
His sister to, I think, Tahira Knight is her
Tahira
name,
Knight,
correct?
yes, sir.
And did she have a boyfriend named Michael Lewis, something along those lines?
Yes.
Okay. Am I correct that as part of that investigation, you gave Tahira Knight and Mr. Lewis a recording device so that they could record a conversation with Corey McMath?
I gave them one recorder.
Okay,
Yes.
you gave them one recorder.
Right, not each, just one.
And am I correct that they were able to record a conversation with Corey McMath?
Yes.
Okay, and that recording was given to you, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You indicated on direct that you obtained a 911 call, is that right?
Yes, sir.
In the that 911 call didn't, nobody saw what happened. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that 911 call didn't tell you one way or another about who did it or what had occurred?
No.
When you go to take the pictures of Mr. Baptista, that's on May 9th of 2014, is that right?
Can I look at my report?
Yes, of
real quick?
course.
Yes, sir.
That is exactly 2 weeks following the April 25th incident, correct?
Exactly 2 weeks, yes, sir.
I want to talk about when you find the Impala at the apartment complex in Miami Lakes from do we have that picture that they just introduced of the apartment complex? Nope, that's not it. The apartment complex.
It's 32. It's 32.
There it is. Thank you. The state showed you in direct. The state's
Can I come down?
32. Yes, of course. This apartment complex. Ashley Farrell lives there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Ashley, correct?
Yes, sir.
Armando Baptista does not live here, correct?
No, not
He
that
doesn't
one.
live in the county, correct?
Hollywood.
He lives in Hollywood. Okay. So the vehicle, when you find it, is I'm taking it now. That was it. The vehicle, when you find it, it's. Am I correct that there is like leaves and stuff on it that made it look like it had been there for a little while?
Yes, sir.
It was in a guest parking spot, correct?
I believe so. I'm not really sure what the markings were
Okay.
in that area. I don't recall. It's possible, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
That's okay. It was in an actual parking spot. You
Yeah.
agree with me with that,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
Wasn't
sir.
pulled off on the side somewhere, correct?
No, it was actually in between the lines and the parking space.
And there was no tarp or anything like that hiding the vehicle, correct?
No, sir.
And I think you testified you could actually see blood on the outside of the vehicle right when you walked up to it, correct?
Me. I don't know if someone else would have thought it was blood or something like that. To me, based again on 24 years as a detective, 26 in law enforcement, to me, I knew it was blood. It looked like caked blood, it's a different color. It's not going to be bright red, where somebody would look at it and say, "Oh, that car's full of blood," you know.
But you, as a trained detective, you could see.
To
you
me,
were
it
able
appeared to be
recognize
blood, yes.
right there. You were also able to see the broken pieces of the beer bottle right there on the passenger seat, right through the window, correct?
Yes, sir.
These windows were not dark tints where you couldn't see through, correct?
No.
That vehicle, am I correct that that was a Chevy Impala? It was registered to Ashley Farrow.
Yes, sir.
Right? And again, Ashley Farrow is the girlfriend of Demetrius Elder.
Yes, sir.
The license plate was assigned to a 2014 Kia Optima, correct?
I believe so. I know it wasn't assigned to the vehicle. I think she had just bought a new car, and I think it was Detective Toyota that found the vehicle registered to her, and so he's the one that, you know, basically he called me, said, "Hey, I think I found the car. Go over to this address in Miami Gardens, see if the car is for the day." And that's when I left there, drove to that location, and started driving around looking for the car.
Did you see when?
Looking for the car.
Did you see when Ashley had purchased that new vehicle?
No, I don't recall.
It wasn't within the last week, correct?
I don't think so. I mean, I probably looked at it at some time back then. I don't have a recollection of that. Again, it was Detective Toyota that did the research on that. He was sitting at the office doing research while we were doing surveillance, and that's how we came up with it.
When you were there, it was May the 2nd of 2014?
At
the Coral Gate, when you first find the vehicle at the Coral Gate apartment complex.
Yes, May 2nd. Yes. You're correct.
And you indicated that you got some surveillance video of the apartment complex, I guess the parking lot?
Yes, sir.
All right. And did it show the entire, how far back did that surveillance video go?
We pulled back from the day of the incident. And I think we had to go back like 4 or 5 days from the day of the incident, because again, the time was messed up on the recorder. I can't tell you the exact dates, but it was from the day of the incident, then go back 5 days, and then to May 2nd, which is the day that we found the car.
And that video, you still have that in Miramar Police Department evidence?
Yes, sir.
When you visited, I want to go to the hospital, you visited Demetrius Elder in the hospital in order to take some pictures and get some DNA from him, correct?
Yes.
He was a patient at that hospital, correct?
Yes.
And he wasn't a patient because he'd been beaten or as a result of this incident. It was because he had an illness, a condition. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
And the only picture that we see here is of his face. Am I correct that he was, when you saw him, he was very, very skinny? Is that correct?
Yes. That was the first time I saw him.
That was the first time you saw?
Because Detective Toyota and I think Tomlin did make contact with him prior to that
Okay.
at his job intel.
Mhm.
I think it was the day that we found the car or something.
You weren't there, right?
I wasn't there, so
Okay.
no.
So the first time you see him, he's in the hospital.
At the hospital, yeah.
He's a patient at the hospital. He's
Right.
staying at the hospital, and he's very, very skinny when you see him, correct?
Yes.
I want to go talk a little bit about the bottle at the Miramar Police Department when it's found in the car. I want to talk about the car itself and what you observed in the processing of that vehicle. Have you yourself ever been trained in the lifting of latent fingerprints?
Basic stuff at the academy,
Okay.
and I think we might have had, during the course of my career, maybe a training class at the PD.
Okay.
But that, again, that's because road patrol does certain functions, like at burglaries, they'll lift their own prints sometimes. If it's an extensive thing, they'll call. So it's not something that we typically do.
And I just want to know if you were trained in it.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you've observed technicians also dust for fingerprints, correct?
Yes, sir.
You take a surface, you put like a powder on it, and you see if you can see any fingerprints, correct?
That's one way. There's other ways too.
For a car, for example, if a car is wet, will that impact your ability to lift the dust for fingerprints?
You have to let it dry.
Okay, you have to let it
It's
dry.
my understanding.
While you...
There could be a way that I'm not, there could be, I think it has to be dry.
No problem. While you were there, did you ever instruct Ms. Clay to dust the outside of that car for fingerprints?
The vehicle was dusted for prints outside.
It was dusted?
I believe it was, yes, sir.
Okay, by whom?
Either Ashley Clay or I believe it was, but I couldn't tell you who. Again, it's not, I don't sit there. I look at the car, I do a once over. I don't go inside the car or anything like that. They're probably doing all their stuff. I'm sitting out of my car till they're done.
Do you have any idea if any prints were lifted from the outside of the vehicle? Did you see any while you were there?
I don't recall.
Did you ever observe Ms. Clay spray the outside of that vehicle with luminol?
I believe it was. I know we discussed that. I don't know if we're outside, inside. I know we discussed that, yes, sir.
Would you agree with me that if you wanted to dust the outside of that car for fingerprints, you would need to do it before spraying it with luminol?
Again, I'm not a crime scene technician. I'm not trained in that.
A car with a liquid, you would agree with me that's going to impact your ability to get prints from that vehicle.
Yes, sir.
You testified on direct that the bottle, the bottom of the bottle, was not in the same condition that it was when you saw it 4 years ago. Is that correct? You said it would tossed around a little bit?
Yeah, from packaging and moving it around, I mean, if you look at the picture, it looks like bigger pieces of it. When I opened it some of it looks like a little bit smaller pieces.
Okay,
Like the label itself looked, it was still broken, but it was a little bit better than
It was
condition.
more put together 4 years ago than it is now.
Yes,
Correct.
but it was still in pieces.
I want to take a look at some of these photographs and ask you some questions about these photographs. You have the photos from the outside of the timeout? No.
Thirty-three and 34.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about some of the stuff that we see here inside the car. So I'm going to show you. This is a
Bottom right corner.
state composite 34.
Bottom right corner is going to show you.
Picture 25. Can you see that? Am I correct? So we're looking at picture 25. So am I correct? This is obviously the broken beer bottle here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Am I correct that Miss Clay ends up swabbing all of this, swabbing all of this, swabbing this here, correct? To do a presumptive test for blood, correct?
If you show me a picture with her labels, but again, it's not something. I saw the labels and stuff like that, the numbering, but I'm not there, there's nothing there, so I can't tell you.
So as the lead detective in this case, are you telling me you can't tell me whether this tested positive for blood or not?
Well, that's not labeled, I don't know.
So I can show you a labeled one. Yeah, we can go with this. Here's a picture of the door frame, number 9. This is picture 88. You agree with me that the substance that's found on the door frame presumptively tested positive for blood?
It's from this picture, that looks blue, so yes, that would be presumptive for blood.
Okay, so you need to be able to look at the picture to be able to tell whether it tested positive for blood. That's not in your report or anything like that.
That's crime scene's responsibility to document.
Okay. Number 10. Can you tell me whether number 10 tested positive for blood?
No, I can't. Unless he did a presumptive test on it, I wouldn't know.
Tell me if number 11 will test positive for blood?
Again, this is something you would better ask them than me. It's not something that I do. I know they don't test every single item. That, if there's a stain, if this is all stained, okay, there's spot here, okay, they're not going to test every single spot to see if it's blood. They might take one section of this whole thing and test that, and it's presumptive for blood, and they're not going to swab every little. They'll swab it, they'll collect it, but they're not going to put it in a vial to see if it's presumptive.
I agree with you. You're here, you're the one that the pictures came in through, so I need to ask you some questions about those pictures. I showed you 11 earlier. Here's another picture of 11. It's picture 98. Would you agree with me? And you can look at the picture.
On that, it looks blue, so that would be a presumptive test that it's for blood. And again, it's a presumptive. It doesn't say 100% that it's blood.
Sure.
That has to be tested.
Looking at marker number 12, this is picture 99. This light is so bright. There we go. Would you agree with me that number 12, this stain on the passenger seat tested positive for blood?
You know, again, that's a presumptive test. I can't testify and say I saw her do every one of those, but if it's blue, it would be presumptive for blood, yes.
Uh, 13, this is picture number 100, was also presumptive positive for blood, correct?
Yes, sir.
We've got 16. I don't see a swab picture for 16. Does that mean that Miss Clay probably didn't swab it one way or another?
Ask that again?
I don't see a picture.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Well, let him ask the question.
I don't see a picture for a presumptive,
The presumptive test.
the presumptive blood test for 16. Does that mean that Miss Clay didn't do that?
If she didn't photograph it, I would say no, she didn't do a test for it. But if she photographed it like this, I would say that she swabbed it for blood.
Got a picture on 17. Again, we don't have a blue, we don't have a swab picture. My question, though, goes to the seatbelt. Did you ever observe Miss Clay pull out that seatbelt and take any pictures of the seatbelt itself?
No.
A marking on 18 here, and then this is picture 108, picture 109. Would you agree with me that number 18, there was a presumptive positive test for blood? You can look at the actual photo if that helps. It looks blue. And I've got 19 and 20.
What photo was that?
This is picture 112. So when Ms. Clay is in there, she's the one that's actually marking these, correct? With the numbers?
Yes.
So she finds things that she thinks are of some evidentiary value, and the procedure is a number goes there, and then I guess there's like a ruler thing to show how big it is. Is that
Right.
correct?
Scale.
All right. And this is the headrest from the passenger seat, correct?
Front passenger, yeah.
The front passenger seat. Thank you. Am I correct that this blue butter knife tested negative, presumptive negative for blood?
I believe so, but I don't recall right now.
And while we're at the driver's seat, are you aware of anything testing positive for blood at the driver's seat?
I don't think so, man.
I want to show you, am I correct that this is the center console, 24, 25, and 26, this is photo 139?
That's the center console.
That's what the center console looks like. And would you agree with me that it would appear that Ms. Clay did a swab of number 24, which tested positive for blood, presumptive positive test for blood? Yes, sir. Thank you. You can have a seat. Judge, I have nothing further.
Correct.
Briefly, Your Honor. Detective Bertrand, you were being asked about the red solo cup and you asked to explain your answer. Could you please do that?
Objection, calls for narrative.
Overruled, go ahead.
Well, I think we discussed it already. It's the fact that the lab doesn't take, unfortunately, it's not like on TV. The lab doesn't take, I wish every piece of evidence that we collect gets tested and everything gets analyzed. But you also have to understand our Sheriff's Office, who does our crime scene analysis, also does every other city in Broward County. And we have guidelines as far as how many things we can send to them at a time. Okay, whether it's 5 items, whether it's 10 items, usually not more than 10 items. Once you make an identification of someone in a case, because basically what you're trying to do with sending DNA and fingerprints and such is to identify the person. And once you have an identification of the person at the crime scene, then sending in 10, 15, 20 more items, they just don't do it. You already got the person identified, and unless there's for some reason that maybe perhaps the state attorney wants something additional, then we send it. But outside of that, once you have the person identified, it's done and over.
And Detective Bertrand, counsel asked you about the bottom of the bottle. Did you notice a pattern on the outside rim of the bottom of the bottle?
What?
Objection, motion eliminated.
Overruled.
Did you notice a pattern?
I did.
And what did that pattern look like, if you could describe it?
It was kind of like a V pattern, but when put together with the other, it kind of formed like almost like a W. And I don't know if anybody here has ever drank a beer, but the beer bottle on the bottom has a distinct, has a thing. I don't know what the reasoning for it, if it's to give it traction on a table or something, but there's a pattern. If you touch it, there's a ridge on that. And
And so did this
The
beer bottle have
pattern
that same?
that was on the beer bottle on the bottom.
Just stop you right there, that's all I
Hold
want
on.
you to talk about.
Hold on, everybody, be quiet. You have an objection?
Yes, Judge, as to this witness, motion to eliminate this witness's qualifications.
Okay. I'm overruling that objection based upon what we talked about at sidebar.
Judge, can you come sidebar again, please?
Judge, I'm not going any further than that, so.
Okay.
That's it, so I'm just talking about the pattern.
All right.
Okay. And so in terms of latent prints, when we were discussing that, when was the last time you personally lifted latents, if ever?
Gotta be 25 years ago or so, when I was on the road.
Okay. And with regards to Ashley Clay, where is your understanding of where she currently works?
Objection to hearsay?
If you know.
I know.
Objection to hearsay?
Hold on. Let's go side. Oh, you stood up by yourselves. There you go.
Detective Bertrand, have you had occasion to see Ashley Clay since she left the employment of the Miramar Police Department?
Yes, at the police department, she's come to visit and say hi in uniform.
And what uniform was she wearing at that point?
Miami-Dade Police Department.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, you're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude the festivities for today. Tomorrow we are going to start at 8:30. I know that a couple of you are going to concerts or what have you tomorrow night. Do not worry about that. You will be out of here. Have plenty of time for that. But we're going to start at 8:30 tomorrow and 8:30 on Thursday. And hopefully we'll get the case on Thursday. Okay? So have a good night. And in other words, don't talk to anybody about the case. Don't talk among yourselves about the case. Have a good night. Okay, folks, we will see you tomorrow, 8:30 sharp.